Thank you, Hayata. And please, do take a seat. Do take a seat, because we are continuing with our panel discussion. Oh, whichever. I'm going to take the clicker from you.
Thank you.
And we're continuing with our panel discussion because we are diving deeper into creating ecosystems, into collaboration to create a better ecosystem for the future. And Hayata Okubo is on the stage already. I would like to welcome the moderator for this next talk. She's the chairperson of the board at the Commercialization Reactor Fund, a seasoned finance professional with over 20 years of experience with the passion for supporting deep tech in various levels. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on the stage Ilona, Gulchak. Welcoming back on the stage, we heard from him already, but we want to see more of him representing EnergySpin accelerator, Marko, Koski. Marko, welcome back. Let's welcome back on the stage from Sherwin-Williams, Mark, Schubert. Mark, welcome. And let's welcome on the stage for the first time with over 18 years of experience in leadership, strategy, and finance. He has proven track record of success across various industries, from co-founding, for example, a 100 million venture capital entity to working at venture capital investor from Whipped Ventures, Apron Ventures. Let's welcome on the stage Christophe, Pompee. Christophe, nice to see you. Welcome to Deeptech Atelier. Next up, please welcome on the stage a passionate, purpose-driven leader at Kiilto Ventures. With a background in chemistry and innovation, he has spent over 10 years of developing solutions for a sustainable future. He's a discovery partner at Kiilto Ventures, Christopher Mills. Welcome, Christopher.
Nice.
Last seat is yours. Ilona, take it away.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel. We will be discussing today how to navigate in the complexities of collaborations between industry and startups. And thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. It was really a hot topic. While we all understand what are the benefits of startups collaborating with industry, this collaboration comes with a unique set of challenges, and we all understand that these challenges are cultural differences, budget constraints, IP concerns, speed of the decision making, and so on and so forth. But the question I want to raise today is whether the collaboration between industrial companies are possible in order to solve some of these challenges, or maybe to even raise the level how, let's say, these challenges can be solved, and the approach how to collaborate with industry can be seen from a bit different angle. And I think Hayata has a bit highlighted in his presentation that some collaborations within a vertical or between verticals are possible. And maybe my first question to all of the participants, maybe you can give some examples of such industry collaborations between verticals or within the vertical, if they are successful, if they are addressing these kind of challenges. So please, maybe we can start with Hayata, and anyone else can jump in.
Yeah, so do you want me to bring up some a concrete example?
It will be nice,
yes?
Yeah, I think.
So, yeah, we've been doing open innovation platform for the past 20 years. So we have some success cases between global startups and corporates, as I showed today. So one of the cases that I want to mention today is the case between Kiilto and the Septon, which is a LiDAR manufacturing startup. So Kiilto is the automotive supplier for lightnings, and they are looking for new solutions in the LiDAR industry. And they found Septon, and they started working with them. So the first project was like a joint R&D. So they developed a prototype to exhibit at CES, which is one of the biggest startup conference in the US. And the Kiilto decided to make a 50 million investment into Septon. And after 2 years, Septon exited. So this is kind of one of the success cases we have. So there are three factors that kind of contributes to this success. So first one is the management commitment from the very early stage of conversation. So we invited the Koito's executives to the early stage of conversation. So we had kind of commitment from the management. And the second one is the utilization of corporate asset. So the Septon was successfully able to utilize know-hows and the manufacturing facilities of Koito. So that's why it went well, smoothly. And the third one is the most important. So Koito didn't take any exclusivity from Septon. So Koito allowed Septon to sell the products that they developed together to even their competitors. But Koito got the manufacturing business of this product. So it was win-win situation. So it didn't limit the growth of Septon. And also the Koito acquired a big business opportunity. So we kind of would like to create this kind of collaboration continuously. So maybe I would like to know what your thought and if you have similar cases or maybe different opinion.
Yeah, my question, yes, to Marko. Let's say if you can see within Vasa region that big corporations form alliances to work with startups, let's say to pull together resources, knowledge and experience, if you experience such kind of examples.
Yeah, good question. Hayata-san, it was excellent kind of discussion because the verticals, if they're not competing, it's easier to put together than competing industries. If the industries are competing with each other, they have their core focus areas, and it's quite difficult to actually find the good places where you take a strategic focus on. So you need some sort of intermediator, finding and discussing with those, understanding the business opportunities, understanding what they're looking into. So something that they're not working on at the moment is we have something called EnergySpin, where we put all those corporations together, finding the new solutions. For example, hydrogen is one of those because none of them is really working on still on that issue. So we have the hydrogen on the table, we have intermediator, and then we put those corporations together and trying to find how we can actually solve them together, because it's still be in the future a big business, all of them. So. All
right. I'm just wondering how, let's say, this industrial alliance is prioritized on what to concentrate. I think, let's say, within one corporation, it's really hard, let's say, to take the decision. I think it's even harder to do so in that alliances. Mark, maybe you have anything to add on that or on the previous topic?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge because very innovative and creative ideas to originate and become sort of like make a big impact in the marketplace is very difficult for that one entity to do. And I really like Hayato's example of bringing the value stream together. That's really what we try to do. One example we had was a product that we commercialized about 7, 8 years ago called Paint Shield, which actually had an active kill claim for viruses and bacteria for anything that would land on the wall. And that involved a broad, and it involved government funding too, but that was something that we couldn't have done totally by ourselves for various reasons. But it definitely takes collaborating across the value chain to make these big initiatives get enough critical mass to go.
All right. Christopher and Christophe, you are coming both from corporate venture capital industries, and I think there is a role from the ecosystem perspective for such players. What's your take on that? Let's say, can industrial corporations form alliances? Can they pool their resources together, or it's kind of strictly the benefit focused? What's your take on that?
So if I take the view of the metal industry, it's a highly competitive industry, obviously. It's commoditized product, pressure on the margin. They are well known for being always chasing cost and efficiencies. So obviously it's going to be very selfish if they launch CVC, corporate venture capital, right? One of the reasons why at Aperam they have launched this unit is really to accelerate the pace of innovation, accelerate two roadmaps, which is actually important in the steel industry. We're talking about the green transition, which is supported by the EU industrial policies, and also the digital transformation of the steel industry. Let me remind you that the steel industry is It's sitting at the backbone of our economy. There is steel and stainless steel in this building everywhere that we sit. So if you were to deploy a corporate venture capital unit, it's going to be essentially to support the core business and to accelerate those roadmaps and to chase efficiency and achieve market leadership.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to the excellent points that one concrete example of industry cooperation is actually in the standardization regulation field. So there, when a startup is coming with a new solution, then quite often the standards and regulation don't actually allow that solution to expand into the market. And what we've been doing is actively starting that dialogue with every startup we meet, is that, do you understand the regulation landscape? Can we use our networks inside standardization, inside the committees where the decisions are made on what sort of rules are the governing what can happen, what we can do, and we can start that process early enough, because a typical standard from zero to standard in EU takes between 3 to 5 years from the first sort of first Word document to actually being an approved standard. So that needs to start from day one for a Deeptech startup, that the standards are ready when the product is ready. So it doesn't help if you have TRL of 9 if the standards aren't allowing you to bring that onto the European market or the global market. So that's something that we definitely work together with other corporates to make sure that if there's something interesting that will take the whole industry forward, then we have that in place already in time, that when it's ready for market, then there's also the sort of environment where it can flourish.
You've touched a very interesting topic, the regulation. Let's say, when we speak about regulation and collaboration with startups, do you work there alone directly with a startup, or let's say you collaborate within the ecosystem? Because this regulation and standards is an important topic. Let's say sometimes it is overseen by startups and they are not paying too much attention to that. Let's say how you deal with these topics.
Yeah, I think there's two things. So regulation is usually, and standards are coming from also third parties. So typically research institutes or other sort of government-led bodies. So having that dialogue early enough, then we think of it as a triangle concept, where we're sort of bringing in the third parties, the startups and corporates into the discussion early enough, that how can we change the standards to allow this new solution to come to the market. And what that, maybe I'd like to add to that, then I think you're definitely right that it is a topic that startups sort of don't understand at all. So it's one sort of blind spot often on the startup journey, is there's very few mentors who have actually written standards and understand that it's a group of people like us sitting here who actually decide the regulation, that what are the rules that we all play by.
All right, I see Marko.
Yeah, I'd like to add that that's a very good point, that you have then testing protocols to demonstrate that you meet the standards of the regulation, and sometimes those testing protocols can be so cost prohibitive that a startup could never afford it, and sometimes even for large corporations like my own, it's a barrier to going into a new direction. So there definitely needs to be some early discussions and collaboration to understand what are the new standards going to be, what are the testing protocols, and how we're going to make it so that people can actually demonstrate that they meet the standard, and not letting that be a barrier to entry of new technology.
And how to find funding for that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's important. Yeah, so it can be underestimated in the very beginning that this is needed, and then the question can be, let's say, at a later stage, which can stop the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Christophe, my question to you, let's say, do you see that industrial partners want to have the venture arm just for their own, or you see that there are collaborations, you see some trends unfolding in the area which can help both, let's say, the industry and the startups to succeed?
Well, that's a good question. There's actually no size fits all when it comes to CVC, corporate venture capital. there is various reasons why you would like to set up a corporate venture capital unit, either for usually strategic value or for financial return. And strategic value could be either for the core business or for the needs of diversification, or looking at what could be the future of your business model industry in the next 20 years. So more like an exploratory mandate. So if this is to explore, I would say that companies are more happy to collaborate with others, right? For financial return as well, because it doesn't prevent them from hitting the numbers and being competitive. But when I look at the industry that I know well, which is metal mining, primary industry, they are so focused on cost and achieving performance that the primary focus will be first to achieve performance, and the second one is really to come back to the regulation, to comply with the regulation, and essentially metal and mining are high emitting industry, so they are working toward net zero very quickly. So they need to make a lot of investment if they want to help others to reach that goal, which is a common goal in Europe. They need to work together, I believe so. Let's say for decarbonization purposes, that makes sense to have alliances. But for other type of, I would say, strategic imperative, that would be probably more a solo game for now, right? Because it's so competitive industry.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you can share that you are also working on a project now, how to actually combine these efforts in order to help both sides. If you can elaborate a bit more.
So right now, I don't know if that's been said here today, but globally the venture capital industry is slowing down. There's a lot of write-off, VC turning shop and down round. But what is picking up today is corporate venture capital. A lot of corporates are sitting with a lot of cash on their balance sheet. They don't have an urgent need to return cash to their shareholders. They need to accelerate the pace of innovation, and they know that R&D, joint venture, and M&A is not enough, and they need to look at outside. Therefore, there is a need to accelerate the pace of corporate innovation through venture capital, right? We also know that most of the corporate, they don't have the skills, neither the network, the experiences of working with early stage businesses. They are good at some stuff, but there's so much stuff they need to teach them. Usually corporate prefer a company which has, they are stable, they have a long track record, they are well known in the industry. So when it comes to startup, they just want to touch them. We have seized this opportunity to set up an advisory business, corporate venture capital as a service that actually play the intermediary between the startup ecosystem and the corporate to build those corporate innovation acceleration program. It could be a fund, it could be a different unit, it could be a separate entity, whatever model that makes sense for the corporate, because we know that corporate needs to access those networks, they need to capture innovation and to realize synergies. And they don't want to do it alone. Co-investment is also interesting for them. So actually, I wanted to say our focus is actually helping corporate to access 3 specific regions in the world. The first one is Central Eastern Europe. So sitting here today in the Baltics is extremely important for us to understand better the ecosystem. We'll be spending a lot of time in the Balkans since the beginning of this year. The second region is Southeast Asia, and the last one is LATAM, which are totally overlooked markets. Pace of creation of unicorn is very high. We strongly believe in those ecosystems, and I think you will see in the future more and more global investors coming here and helping companies to get off the ground, fostering innovation and accelerating the investment in those regions. We want to be first move advantage and helping corporate to access those ecosystems and foster innovation, alliances, whatever it's needed to make it happen.
For sure, for sure. I think you have touched upon a very interesting aspect. We have been discussing that startups sometimes are not realizing something, that are not prepared for something. But it seems that very often corporations are also not ready working with startups. And maybe Hayata and Marko can share their experiences. And let's say if your ecosystems are working towards, let's say, upskilling the corporations for, let's say, open innovation, for collaboration with startups. What are the initiatives are taken, let's say, in Japan and in Finland towards this?
Yeah, I would say like most of the Japanese companies are still like in the process of learning how to work with startups, but there are some companies that are very advanced in open innovation with startups. So what we are trying to do is kind of sharing failure and success of open innovation with each other. So I think the companies that started the open innovation recently can learn from the failures of, for example, Sony or I don't know, Mitsubishi. These companies have been doing open innovation for quite a long time. So I think this is something that we would like to promote a little bit more in the near future.
But do you run some kind of specific programs?
Yeah,
for corporations?
we invite all the corporate partners like together to the event, and we kind of let them share their success and failures, etc. So we have what we call like all corporate partners meetup. So this is something that we are hosting on a regular basis.
Something.
And also we do have an executive breakfast, which is like we invite all the executives of all the corporate partners to the breakfast and to share their thought and their challenges, and maybe some of them can solve each other's challenges. So
I'm wondering how open are they, let's say, during such breakfast? Well, I failed in this project. So are they open really to say that?
We constantly need to kind of brainwash them. So if we put them in just randomly, nothing would happen. So we kind of keep
so you stimulate this,
yes, yeah, communicating with them on a regular basis.
Okay, Marko, anything to share from your side?
For the corporation, I believe there should be always an innovation unit, at least someone who's responsible. Because if you think about business units, they're running them on their schedules. They have the certain time frames, and if somebody's coming with a startup idea or a good product even, so it's away from their kind of KPIs. So there should be always somebody who's mediator between, let's say, different business units and also with the startup, or even somebody neutral. And one of the key issues is the time frame and the resources. The earlier startups, they don't fit into working together with the large corporations because they look at the solutions which they could implement directly. That's one of the key issues we are finding, at least, that somehow putting the TRL level higher towards before actually entering the discussions together with the corporations and understanding each other.
But do you go inside the corporations, let's say, do you check their readiness for working with startups? Do you do some kind of consultancy on kind of one-to-one basis or on a group basis, or it's not a practice?
We do that. The problem comes also quite often with the big corporations that they change the positions between the people because they're learning kind of a process for them as well. So it might be 3-4 years in one position and then putting somebody else, and they always start learning again. So it should be good for the corporations to have it going for the whole organization, basically, at least meet some level management and so on. So we do have those discussions, and we need to start them all over again once the people in the position change, unfortunately.
I see. Mark, sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I've started to realize our job as CVCs, we have quite a flexible mandate, so it's not force-fed collaboration. So it's up, and what I've started to realize is that it's being an honesty broker between the startup and the corporate. So it's having those discussions with the startup that, does this make sense for your journey? Is this the right time to work together with this size of company? And it's having the discussions with the company or with your own company as a CVC that, is this really your priority? Is this in your KPIs, as Marko said? Is this something that you really want to put effort and resources towards? And often that discussion doesn't happen before the actual sort of collaboration starts, and it leads to, as in any team, if you haven't had an honest discussion about the common vision of the partnership, then it often leads into problems where the expectations are different later on. So I truly believe that's one of our jobs as CVCs, is to broker this honesty in the ecosystems both ways, that it's not a sort of solution that always fits to work together between startups and corporates.
Just a moment. As a CVC, let's say, as a broker between the corporation and a startup, do you evaluate the readiness of your company to work with this particular startup? Let's say, is there, let's say, a commitment from the management side to support this? Is there understanding between the middle management, let's say, because sometimes processes can be horizontal? So is it the same your job to evaluate that?
Yeah, of course, we have the unfair advantage that I've been working also in the corporate side before my career in the CVC, so I know things that I shouldn't know. But I think that's valuable to have that discussion on many levels. So often the sort of management expectation is innovation and working together with startups, but the middle management have KPIs that aren't related to that. So having that understanding of an organization structure is something that every startup that wants to work with corporates should understand, that you need the buy-in from the level that will be actually implementing the solution as well as the higher up level. Otherwise, it's a very painful journey.
Yeah. Christophe?
Yeah, to that point, actually, when I was running the CVC, I was spending probably 70% of my time doing what you just described, which is what we call strategic alignment, from the production engineer on the shop floor all the way down to the CTO leadership, to make sure that everybody is aligned with the business case, everybody understands why we're doing it. And then when we show up at an investment committee, there's no like, oh, but we didn't check it, we don't know, or maybe I need to speak to my N -2, -3. It's a lot of work, right? And probably as a learning point, this should be formalized and standardized. And to your point about assessment of the corporate readiness, it's very hard to do it. You could do it as a very theoretical exercise, but it's really case by case. That's what our experience actually, depending of the topic, depending of the type of technology, depending at what's the current strategy of the company, who is the current leaders, what's the current market condition. This will change the appetite of the corporate to be ready to tackle that innovation and make it happen. Because yes, we could say we are ready, we all agree on investment committee, but post-investment, for me, this is where I really start the real work, because you need to make those synergies happen. And then also you need processes for that, because everybody gets excited because we find a great company, great founders, great technology. We presented a very compelling business case. We wrote the check, we tried the money. Now what's going to happen, right? And then the corporate is really waiting to see concretely that those synergies are happening, is making the whole business better, right? And this is also something that's worth mentioning.
Mark, finally a question to you in relation to this as well. When working with startups, how do you evaluate the process? Do you have, let's say, some kind of approaches? What went well, what didn't? Yeah, so can you share your experience with us?
Yeah, I'm listening to the conversation and thinking about the process that our company's been using over the last 15 years and how much it's evolved over that time as we've learned from tough lessons and have the scars to prove it. We're a corporate partner with Plug and Play for several years now, and that's been valuable for us, both as teaching us how to work with startups. And I think Marko mentioned that too. We have to learn how to do that. And so Plug and Play is kind of was the first time we got serious about learning how to do that better. The other advantage from that is while we're at the events at a place like Plug and Play or an event like this one, we can talk to the other corporate partners and share best practices and develop relationships. And I found that that's almost just as valuable as meeting the new startups, because you get to kind of check what others are doing and compare yourself to it. So yeah, there definitely needs to be an internal process for like onboarding a startup that even occurs before you meet that startup. You have to set yourself up for what you know you need. At least that's our approach. Let's do some internal market research, find out what the needs are in the company, and then go out and look for technology solutions that can help address those needs. And then when you bring that startup in, you're going to be talking to somebody who has already explained to you their need, and you say, I think I have something that can meet your need. And whether it's with a CVC or not, I think that's a necessary thing to do, or that activity is just, we found them not to be produce much real end result. If you just find a bunch of interesting things and throw them over the wall to the project teams inside, it just doesn't go very well.
Indeed, indeed. I think we still have some time. I have a question, again, to all of you. You mentioned different types of projects that you have implemented or, let's say, facilitated between industry and startups. What are the typical composition of funding for such kind of projects? Maybe some example can be also mentioned. Is it always that a startup need to find, let's say, funding on the side, or corporations also do fund part of the project themselves? How does it usually work? If you can share, let's say, your experiences. We can start with Hayata again.
Yeah, I think based on my experiences, for the most part, corporates are funding the project with
fully, yeah?
Fully funding the project. But these days there are more and more options from the government. So the government is funding the kind of joint project between startups and corporates, and now it expanded to Japanese startups to global corporates. So we see a lot of government money going into this open innovation project. So hopefully we increase this kind of funding more in the future. But yeah, mostly from the corporates. Yeah.
Is it so in Vasa the same, or it's a bit of a blend?
It's true, because one of the things that corporations should pay something because to have skin in the game. And of course, some venture arms, they're putting some money in because it's new innovations, it takes more time, takes more resources. And of course, corporations could put also not only money, but some other personal people working on the new stuff as well, because it might be interesting for them, and they should be interesting, so they need to have their resources on that one as well. But more or less, we have something called locomotive projects going on with the large corporations, where they have put the emphasis what they scope area they're focusing on, and the government will match with 50%. So these kind of pilot projects are very much indeed with the new innovations needed, because otherwise, at the moment, let's say corporations, they get 200, 300 new ideas in a day, and not perhaps in a day, but they will cut till 1% which could go forward. So those who are not kind of really much in the core could be very interesting still, but how you can actually fund them. So their governmental money comes involved.
All right. But it's also, let's say, depends on the capability of the organization to put in also human resources. Let's say how many people can manage how many projects. It's not just funding, it's also other resources. Okay. Mark, anything to mention regarding what type of funding are typically used, let's say, when working with Sherwin-Williams?
Yeah, our funding is primarily faith in kind. We're working alongside the startups to test their materials or test their software or whatever the concept it might be. But I think partnering, finding the government sources for that funding can be helpful. But I want to build on your last point that it's often not just money that is the bottleneck, but it's the time of the people inside the industrial partners to actually put the blood, sweat, and tears into the project to see if that startup's concept is worthy or not. Because if it's worthy, large corporations have the ability to fund the work. It's getting them to believe that this is really something valuable, and that takes time and effort, not just on the startup's part, but on the project teams that are inside the company as well. Once management begins to hear their own project teams sing the song of the startup, then they'll get the checkbook out. But it takes that work to be done first.
For sure.
I think it's it's a very good point. I often see we introduce very good startups to the innovation unit, and the innovation unit is very eager to work with them. But when it comes to Deeptech, they need involvement from the business unit or R&D people, but they don't have human resources to work on the project. So what we are trying to do is we try to grant authority to the innovation unit to be able to assign or allocate some human resources to these projects. But we also need to talk with their executives, and it has to be top-down decision. So it's kind of difficult, but that's something like what we could do as a open innovation platform.
Here comes the needs of an ecosystem, actually, to support the whole thing. Yeah, right. Christophe?
It's a very good point, actually, both of you. It's extremely time-consuming to find the time to say, oh, you're doing whatever you're doing at the CTO technology office. Please have a look at the startup. Oh, I'm busy. I'm sorry. I have no time. And why? What is this? What? So we came up with the idea of creating groups, champions as well, that we entrust and give a bit more power. So when they say this is something interesting for the business, then it carries some weight inside the organization, right? It can unlock some decision. It can unlock budget. When we work for a big listed company, in the scale of a startup, they probably have infinite resources, but they need to be interested. They need to see the value. But you need to convince them a lot, right? The bar is very high, right? So you should not underestimate how hard it is to convince people that are already working on existing project and what they should look at your startup that you find, I don't know, in Riga. You need to have a very compelling case and then dedicate enough resources to make it happen, right? And to your question, in line with the other speaker, its majority is equity from the corporate. I've seen the attempt of putting some debt funding as well, especially for Deeptech, because it's very capital intensive to reduce the risk. But if it's a corporate, it's CVC, they want to lead the round, they take the whole round, it's not a problem.
In Kiilto, for example, is it the same?
It's partly the same. Maybe we've solved this problem in a different way as a family-owned company, then we can look long-term as well. So I think family-owned companies are important for startups as well, for Deeptech especially. And what that means in practice is that it's actually been lifted up to the company's strategy, the same Deeptech themes that the startups are working on. So then it becomes easier to unlock the person, the resource, and the time from people to work on that topic, because it's part of their strategy, it's part of what they're working towards, and just the time scale is a bit different. So they're working on something today, and then the startup is maybe ready in 5 years. But if your strategy is 5 years, then you can have both in the same sort of journey, in the same vision, and we actually call that the Super Healthy Buildings ecosystem vision, and it's really interesting to see how that works to unlock the time from the corporate partner to work together with startups when it's actually in the strategy.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed our discussion. I hope the audience also had some valuable advice. Thank you so much. And we kind of finish our discussion today.
A round of applause to Christopher, Christophe, Marko, Hayata, and our wonderful moderator, Ilona. Thank you very much. Thank you.